Laid back and kicking it, let's head back to the studio. Here's Rod.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're enjoying your Monday morning coffee. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to delay the morning sports update. I'll get to it after our first interview of the day. It'll be brought to you by Ballers Rec Room and Red Bull Canada, because Argos assistant GM John Murphy joins us today as it is draft week in the National Football League, 10 days away from the CFL draft. Good morning, Murph. How are you, my friend?
Hey, guys. How are you?
We're good. Are you as stunned as I am that the poll results, that the majority of people don't care about these drafts, Canadian sports fans?
You know, I would wonder if with what's going on right now, if it hasn't kind of driven it the opposite direction, you know, in terms of from a viewership or a fan, you know, perspective. We're not going to have all the live action of it, right? We're not going to have that. The fans aren't going to be sitting there when their favorite team takes the wrong guy in their mind. We're not going to get all that interaction. They haven't heard and haven't seen all of the kind of water cooler talk, you know, leading up to it, right? You're not seeing those shows. They're not airing that content really as much on the NFL Network or ESPN, right? Because they're stuck in the same, you know, quandary as everybody else. So all the hype and the normal, you know, chit chat of it is more online and more something people are reading in a tweet or reading on, you know, in a story than they are seeing it live action right in front of you. So I think a little more less excitement, you know, when it comes to it. And then I think, you know, from the CFL perspective, you know, that they've done a great job in terms of, you know, announcing and putting out the scouting bureau, you know, list a couple of times a year. But, you know, can we take that next step and you know, add it with content so the fans could be viewing who those top prospects are, you know, the way that, you know, Darren was mentioning, you can go online and watch, you know, Alabama, LSU and all that. Can you really jump online and see a highlight video of the player that you're hoping your team is going to select? And then the other thing is, you know, the CFL draft is more of an investment, you know, type opportunity, right? They're all Canadians. They're all guys that have a specific reason why you're drafting them for your club. But a lot of it is not a here and now type instant gratification, which is what sports fans, especially, that's why everybody loves the gambling part. That's why everybody likes fantasy football. You know, that's why everybody likes kind of the, you know, post-game conversation, you know, or pre-game conversation about a game, is because there's, you know, instant interaction. There's an instant vibe and feedback. CFL draft, there is not, you know, instant gratification when it comes to who most of these teams are picking, because the fans haven't heard of them. They possibly haven't seen them, and they know they're not going to have any effect on their upcoming season unless it's as a role player or bit player. And I think that makes it hard to get to where you can have it be an exciting thing for the fans.
Well, I think you've nailed it. Amid the pandemic, coronavirus, it's not top of mind. That's probably the biggest reason right there. I get it, Murph, but maybe we can shake some people into attention here. Now, for you, I've been around enough personnel guys. Hell, my dad, as you know, was a scout in the NHL for 28 years. The draft is like your Super Bowl. Am I right? Like, you're geeked up.
Yeah, and I said, you know, it's okay, you know, to be dealing with all of this. But, you know, on the other side of things, you're not going to get a pass as an organization to say you had a bad draft because of this, right? If anything, it's going to be less of a reason to have a bad draft because you've had way more time to just watch film. It's different to interview kids, you know, via Skype or you know, in a Zoom setting or over the phone. But you got to trust your people. It's why we try to have, you know, Vince and our scouts send the information to our trainers and our coaches, you know, throughout the course of the year. So this wasn't a sort of an interaction only in February, March, and April. So at least, you know, thankfully our trainers, something I think we benefited from is that our training staff probably would have been used at the combine. So maybe we did a little more due diligence on the medical parts earlier because they were having to help out and do that stuff. So I think, you know, you have to stay on top of things and you got to deal with the things that you have control over. And even though we're not going to know the length of our season or how it's going to affect our roster or salary cap or the global draft, you know, I think come April 30th, you better be ready to roll. And when we're drafting 2, 9, and 11 right now, we probably better have a really good idea of what we're doing and not worry about the outside factors that we have no control over.
Yeah, John, how much does that affect things? You talk about the season, not knowing when it's going to start, if it's going to start on time, what that's going to affect. How much does that affect what you guys are doing going in, even in terms of draft picks, but also in terms of potential trades or things like that?
Right. I think, I've still, kind of felt, like now as we're getting closer, like this week is exciting for the NFL draft. This week is sort of the week that everybody transitions from preparation to sort of more draft mode. So, a few more phone calls, a few more people wondering, with everything going on, do you still want to draft, at 2, 9, and 11, or do you want to do something, possibly with any or all of those picks? So I think, now is when it shifts into sort of that draft mode where teams are going to start having more conversations with each other. And I also think the exciting part of this draft from a pure football perspective is I think there's a lot of different ways to view it. And that should lead to, the excitement part of on draft night. It probably is not going to just be a straight list of reading off the names and everybody being able to key in their mock draft and say, hey, I called that correctly. It would seem like there's going to be quite a number of variables that each individual team decides, like what you said. If we're going to play a shortened season, how do we deal with that? If we lost a Canadian free agency, do we want to address that right now in this draft, or do we want to push it off, for the future? And then, that's a big part of, CFL drafts are the futures. And that's kids that could go back to school because of their eligibility, or guys that might be getting an NFL look. Makes you wonder how teams will decipher through that information and make decisions for themselves once they know that in the coming days.
John, so what does your social distancing war room look like? What's that going to look like? Because every time, a trade's made or a pick's made, that might change things a little bit. And you got to communicate all that kind of stuff. You guys got anything set up for that? Or are you guys all, isolating together?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy for them, right? They have me, so they've pretty much got it covered. Like you guys, if you want ratings, what do? You call me and put me on. So pretty much the
Exactly.
Argos will do the same. Argos will just do the same. No, but in all honesty, the best part about this is, it's literally you're using everything at your disposal, right? John Magri, who is Vince's brother. So it's great to have our scout and his brother are both involved. So they're pretty much always on the same page when it comes to stuff. But, our setup is that if we're going to do the draft via a conference call with the league, that we will then have our own kind of setup like this behind the scenes and have had meetings, all the time behind the scenes with this. It's how our coaches are communicating with each other and with our players. And it's how we've kind of done our draft meetings, sort of to date. And, every time we do it, we put up our mock draft, how we do it, kind of then review it, with each other, give everybody a day or two to, sort of think about how that mock draft played out and how would it play out then in terms of our roster and on the field at some point. And like I said, I mean, we put a lot of emphasis, right? God, kudos to the idiot that said we should invest a lot in doing our draft and having all these extra picks in a year where there was no combine, no workouts, and no interviews. So kudos to whoever brainstormed that idea for the Argos. But besides that, I think the biggest thing is you have to stay on point, right? When we do get back to playing, we have to be prepared, to improve. We have to be prepared to have done the best, job we can in terms of this draft, and then be ready for whatever type of season we're going to get. And then the other thing is everything being pushed back means that, 2020 and 2021 are going to almost be combined into this one long, season of things once you get started, right? Once this ends and we're back, to their new normal, form of life, and we're playing and practicing and preparing for a season, we're going to have a season, and then we're going to go transition right into another off season, and then be right back into this mode again. So I think you have to be very careful not to allow things that are not in your control to short circuit what you were doing. There's no reason to change from our original plan A. That's what we should be dealing with right now off of free agency and how we were transitioning towards the combine and draft. And I think that's our best responsibility to the Argos and our fans is to try to keep all the noise kind of, at a distance.
Speaking of the noise, Murph, this season should be probably sponsored by Doritos or Old Dutch chips, because everybody's got a chip on their shoulder. Bo says he's got a huge chip on his shoulder to prove that he can come back from the injury. Riders have a chip on their shoulder because they didn't get to the Grey Cup. And the Argos might have the biggest chip because people are saying Pinball Clemens doesn't know what he's doing. Ryan Dinwiddie's never coached before. He's too cocky. Like, you guys just must be itching to take to the field and do your talking on the field, I would think.
No, I mean, we're in a division with a self-proclaimed super team, and with a team that had an amazing season last year and come back the way that Montreal did, and in a very interesting situation, much like ours, in Ottawa, where there's a lot of changes, but a lot of familiar faces that have been successful in the CFL, and you would expect them to have the same ability to change their outcome from one season to the next. Again, you see it happen in Montreal, right? You've seen it happen with clubs before where a quick turnaround can happen in 12 to 18 months. It happened in Saskatchewan. It's clearly happened the last 3 to 5 years in Winnipeg. It happened very quickly back in the day, in Calgary. And I think now that you see how well, it was just 3 years ago, Labor Day, that Toronto was the favorite playing a Hamilton team that was struggling. And 3 years later, it's a flip, right? It's a complete inverse of that. So I think you have to take the good and the bad with that part, but say, it's great and it's good feedback or commentary to say there's a chip on your shoulder. It doesn't mean anything if you don't follow through and do something with it and about it. So I think the best way to, carry that chip is to go to work every day, even with the current situation that we're dealing with, and know that we have to improve our roster, at all levels. We have to improve ourselves at all levels. And then once we kind of get all back together, I think one of the things that can work very well for us is there are little ties that bind our coaching staff together in terms of some of them played for these coaches and are now players, who are transitioned to the coaching side. Some of them have worked together. A lot of them have worked in these different divisions. Glenn Young just prepared for Hamilton in the Grey Cup. Dinwiddie, had prepared for Ottawa, Montreal, and Hamilton on his side of the ball. Coach Nelson, and Coach Ike, were coaching in our division, in past years. So I think just taking the time to worry about ourselves and not worry about what other people are thinking or saying about us. There's plenty of time to talk about the chip on your shoulder, but maybe best to do it after you've had a couple of wins and not talk about what you are going to do. Just go ahead and go do it. Sure.
And lastly, Murph, this is just irking me from a personnel standpoint. Who's responsible for the 2, 9, and 11 picks owned by the Argos? Is it my good friend Jim Popp? That is a very desirable place to be. How did the Argos get in that position?
So, it always will have everything to do with everybody, that was involved. It's not any one person. And there's a lot of parts of this roster. Mike O'Connor, there's guys on the neg. There's certainly guys from last year's draft and the last few drafts that definitely should be associated with the good work that Jim did while he was here. And I think the next part was, just opportunity, right? There was a very short window of basically less than 30 hours from doing a press conference to be named to a position and the trade deadline right on top of you. We kind of knew where we stood in that moment. An opportunity came to make a trade that turned out so far to worked out very well for Winnipeg and for Zach Collaros, which is terrific, right? It was great for the league. It was great for Zach to put him in a position to play and be successful. And now the rewards or the other side of that equation is what we need to work on and make sure that we take care of our business with it. We earned, unfortunately, that number 2 pick, and then you never want to go back-to-back years picking 1 and 2. If you do, you're probably going to have to change your resume and find different work. So you should take advantage of it when you're picking this high. And more importantly, like I said, I think we've put a lot of resources into this draft, and now it's our responsibility to follow through in the next 10 days and make sure we do it correctly.
Awesome stuff, Murph. I appreciate the time. Please thank the Argos for putting you on, and good luck. We'll chat with you maybe right after the draft for a recap.
Excellent. No problem. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you as always.
John Murphy joining us from Toronto, and just always a pleasure.
And of course, the ratings went up.
And the ratings went up. You could see it. You could see it.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.